What's up, everybody? Unrested here, and today we've got a hot topic. It's a kind of controversial one. Is Japan racist? Oh, often I don't like to really even delve into this one. It's one of a hot controversy, and it can get a lot of people up in arms, and they can get really angry about people getting divisive and taking sides and splitting the party down the middle. But first of all, I want to let you know that I want to approach this in just an analytical, objective way, looking at some different sides of it, looking at different experiences I've had, which for the most part are not racist at all. For the most part, I would find Japan not to be very racist to me, but then again, I am a white guy in Japan, and often we don't deal with nearly as much racism as some of the other races that come to Japan. And I want to talk about some of their stories too, and these are stories related to me by people of other races who are either living in Japan now or have lived in Japan. They're not my own personal account because obviously I do not know what it's like to be an Asian man, a black man, Spanish man, etc., etc. There's so many different races we could list. We could go on forever and ever. But that's not the point. The point is we want to get into kind of a little bit of an analyzation, and I'm not going to be throwing a ton of statistics and stuff at you. I'm mostly just going to be talking from the heart. I'm going to be talking about from experience. I'm going to be talking about different conversations I've heard about this and my opinion on them. For example, the first one I'd like to start out with is a conversation between Edo Inoue, I think is his full name. That's Eido, and his last name is Inoue. You can check out, he has a blog called Turning Japanese, and it's about how he became a Japanese citizen, about his different life in Japan, all the different stuff that he's done. He's a IT guy, from what I understand. I could be totally wrong, but from what I understand, he's like a programming software IT guy who most likely, I don't know if he works for a Japanese corporation now. I'm almost 100% sure he does, but he speaks perfect Japanese. He's a Japanese citizen. Yes, he actually got his Japanese citizenship, even though he's a blonde white guy. Speaks great Japanese, works for a Japanese corporation, learned pretty much how to do everything in Japanese. And there's another guy whose name is Debito Arudou, and that is spelled like David, which is the katakana version is Debito, Debito. Arudou is Ardou. Ardou. Yes, I'm correct. Anyway, I want to just spell those out because later, if you want to look it up as a reference to the stuff I'm talking about, and also I believe it's either the Give Me a Flake Man channel or the Give Me the Break Man channel, has two different. There's one 2.5 Oyajis where they talk to Eido, and there might even be one where they talk to Debito. I don't know. Debito's probably been on the show before. I know they've talked to both of them. But there was recently a controversy, kind of, and it's not anything that Eido started, and even I don't think Debito had much to do with it either, but perhaps his website did. Now, Debito's different from Eido in the sense that Eido doesn't consider himself any kind of, I don't know, social justice warrior, an SJW, as some people call them. Whereas I would think Debito's main purpose while he was in Japan was to be a social justice warrior. He was fighting for Gaijin rights in many ways that were good. There's some that I agreed with. For example, one very helpful thing that he has online, and he would do all this research for people and find all this information for people and put stuff online for those of us who didn't speak perfect Japanese. Of course, when I came here, I couldn't speak any Japanese at all, so it was very hard for me to communicate many different things. But one of the problems I've talked about in the past is that I get stopped by the police a lot because I have tattoos. And that's not necessarily a racist thing, because actually it's related to gang activity, which they connect to the Yakuza, which I guess comes back indigenous to Japan. So I don't know if we could say that they're pulling me aside to talk to me because their mind is alluding to gang possibilities due to race. They're not saying, oh, white people are gangsters, but they are kind of saying, all tattooed people are gangsters, which that may be more of a bigoted issue. It's not really a racist issue. So nonetheless, it was something that drove me to look at Debito's site about how to interact with the cops, what they can and can't ask you for. For example, they have every right to ask you for your Gaijin card, but if they ask to, per chance, look through your backpack, or if you're riding a, what do you call it, a scooter, and they want to look through like the little compartment case you have underneath the scooter seat, they actually have to have a warrant to do those type of things. They can't just ask you. And he actually had, what he had was a description of the law and how it worked, the law, the actual numbers of the law, like what it was, where it was, and the, I guess, whatever official documents it was that listed the law, the code number for the law, and the law written in English and then written in Japanese, that you could like hold it up, you know, and have the kanji that they could read, because most likely they can't read the English. And you could say, look, according to this law, I don't have to open my bag. So I thought that was really cool. Like, I was really happy with the fact that he had gone out of his way. I mean, this had to be a lot of research, and the guy really knew the language well to be able to translate such difficult vocabulary. I myself cannot, you know, get into like super scientific or politically or analytical discussions, because my Japanese just isn't good enough. You know, I can have a basic everyday conversation about things like music, TV, video games, but if I started to get really deep into subjects that actually mattered, I would be lost. My vocabulary starts to fall apart very quickly. So good on him, I thought, for finding all this information, translating it, and giving Gaijin kind of a cheat sheet. And that's how I learned about him, and a lot of respect for him for doing that. And his website is all based around that. Unfortunately for his website, and I don't know if we can 100% blame Debito for this, but it draws a lot of people who have failed in Japan, who came here and for one reason or another, I'm not saying there's a blanketed overall reason of why they failed in Japan, but many of them failed in Japan either through, like, they got married and it didn't work out, which you don't need to go home, you can just get married again. I've got plenty of friends who've been divorced and married multiple times. I'm not really considering that a failure at all. Or perhaps they wanted to work at a Japanese corporation and didn't get good enough at Japanese to be able to do so, or pass the interview, or write a Japanese resume, or CV, I should say. Whatever the reason, it could be multiple different reasons, but for whatever reason they had to retreat back to their home country. It didn't work out for them, which, I mean, really, I think it's up to you 100% whether or not you succeed or fail here. I don't think any part of Japan can really hold you back. It's a pretty open country, and I mean, if you feel like having to keep working English jobs your whole life is a failure, then you're wrong. That's totally not a failure. I mean, I see 50 and 60-year-old men who seem to be pretty damn happy living completely by themselves alone, working an ALT job and just enjoying the freedom of their life to have as much free time as they want to do whatever they want, and, you know, live in a foreign country and enjoy the atmosphere. I think maybe there's people who've come here looking for more than that, and when they don't get it, they feel like they've failed and they go home. But oftentimes these same people start to blame Japan. They blame Japanese people, or they blame the country they went to rather than internally themselves, and become angry at Japan. They joined Debito's website, and again, I'm not saying this is what his website is based around, and I don't think this is Debito's prerogative, but I'm saying it does attract a lot of those people. And I see a lot of return racism thrown by them at Japanese people, or them shouting that Japanese people are racist on there. For example, a lot of those posters go out of their way to find these different signs and onsens and tempura shops or wherever that say, you know, no Gaijin allowed, or Japanese only, or we only speak Japanese, which is actually and legally against the law, especially for hotels. You cannot deny any race to come into your hotel in Japan. By law, any and every person is allowed to come. The only things that can stop a person, that can what should I say, legally make, I don't want to say it like that, legally make, the only things that are backed up by the law, let's put it that way, the only things that are backed up by the law that would allow you to not allow a person to visit your hotel, your ryokan, which is a Japanese style hotel, are two things. One, that they have an obvious communicable disease that can easily spread. Like if someone came in, you know, bleeding out of their mouth and nose and ears with Ebola, you could deny them service, because you're pretty much putting them into an environment with close quarters and lots of people. You could very easily spread a disease. Um, the other thing is if they have definite and obvious intent to perform illegal activities. For example, I guess if they came in with a gun holstered on their side, or instead of putting all their baggies of drugs inside of their giant trench coat, they stapled them to the outside because they weren't a very smart drug dealer. I don't know. I don't know how you look at somebody and feel like they have the intent of causing some sort of crime. But those are actually the two things that are the only two things that can stop you from allowing a person to stay at your hotel. You can't even say, well, we only speak Japanese here, so you can't come in unless you speak Japanese. You can't say that in Japan either. That's not enforced by the law. If the person came in there and the hotel turned them away, they could call the police, and the police would be like, look, you need to let this person stay here. That's not a good reason. That's not held up by the law. We can't enforce that for you. And so a lot of Debito's site followers go after these kind of places, and I think rightfully so. That's pretty backwards thinking. It's pretty ignorant in the year 2015. I can't believe they're, as people who wouldn't just say, okay, let me go ahead and have a cheat sheet of other languages and how to tell them stuff, and I'll just point to the sheet. The same thing that Debito Ardou did for me for the criminal stuff that cops aren't allowed to do. They're not allowed to suddenly say, let me go through your bag, let me go through. And he made a cheat sheet of English so I could understand it. They can in turn do the same thing for like simple things like tell me, what kind of room you want, and then they could point to a sheet of things written in English, and then it would have it translated in Japanese for them to see, so they could see what they're pointing to, and they both agree on the same thing that they pointed to it. But not everybody thinks about that stuff. It sounds like common sense to you and me, but number one, if you don't even know how to write the English language, that's intimidating to make that cheat sheet. If you don't know how to write any other language other than the one that's indigenous to your country, it's intimidating to make that cheat sheet. You show someone this sheet of totally screwed up English, and there's a lot of screwed up English in Japan, and they're going to laugh their head off. That's pretty embarrassing. It might stop you completely from wanting to write that. Understandable. So, a thing that Edo Inoue, I want to make sure I get these names right, has done on multiple occasions is gone out of his way to, when he finds out about a place like this, to either, number one, casually visit it, come in speaking Japanese, of course, talk to the owners, and just kind of ask them what's up with the situation. Now, he doesn't do this in any sort of aggressive manner. He doesn't do this looking for a fight. He looks as coming in to understand the situation. Like, oh, so I see, you got this sign. What do you mean by, like, foreigners not served here, or Japanese only? And he's coming in asking in Japanese, so of course the owner can easily explain and tell him, oh, well, I'm okay with you. He said almost 100% of the time right away they're like, oh, I'm okay with you because you're speaking Japanese to me, and I can easily know what you're ordering, what I'm asking you about the food, how you want things cooked and stuff like that. But the main thing that scares me off from having foreigners in here is there could be a disagreement on price, and this has happened in the past. There have been sadly events. For example, there was a lot of times where these Russian sailors would come over to onsens near Hokkaido, and they wouldn't understand the rules and stuff, and when the Japanese people would shout at them to stop doing certain things in the onsen, there was one event one time where one Russian sailor freaked out, got angry, he must have been wasted or something, smashed a heating system for the onsen that cost the onsen over $800,000 to repair. And after that, he put up a sign that said, no Russians allowed, or something like that. Or it might have said no Gaijin allowed. I don't know the exact thing. But nonetheless, it did say some sort of race not allowed. And it was because of this incident. And you can kind of see where he's justified in that. That man just lost tons and tons of money because of, the drunken Russian sailors that have been showing up to his onsen. He took a huge loss because of that, and it is detrimental to keep his business going that he doesn't incur another loss like that. And the only place that losses come from is that certain type of person on that certain type of trip. And Japanese people can't look at all white people, just like we can't look at all Asian people and choose what country they are from. And it's kind of funny too because you know, most Japanese people will tell you that they can look at an Asian face and tell what type of Asian they are. And there's actually a test online that has all these different types of Asian faces, just randomly chosen Asian faces, and you have to pick like, are they Korean, are they, you know, Taiwanese, are they Chinese? And I let Gaijin take the test, and we do pretty bad. We do awful. Like most of the time, we only get like 30% right or something like that. And I asked Japanese people, a lot of Japanese people, I said like, us Gaijin, we look at this, we can't see much of a difference. Can you guys? Are like, yeah, of course. I mean, it's so obvious when their faces are different. But every single Japanese person I've ever let take that test does just as bad as the Gaijin people. So it's kind of funny. I feel like that's kind of a myth that Japanese people or any Asian race can pick out another Asian race just by looking at their face and picking out the shape and stuff. As far as I know, from my own personal research of having people take that test, it didn't seem to work out that way. Anyway, let's get back to our story. So, Edo is kind of going about it in the most passive way he can, pretty much tackling these things with kindness. He's going into the shops, having a very, very passive conversation, just kind of asking what the problem is. And then what he does with the owner is brainstorms how to make up a translated menu, a translated selection of orders, a translated selection of room orders, or whatever the situation is. For example, he said one of the most kind of, I don't want to say dangerous or controversial, but one that could have gotten people into the most trouble, and I'm not saying gotten them into legal trouble, but gotten them into some sort of danger, was he went to a haircut place, and to keep their license, their haircut license, they have to be very careful with how their scissors are used. For example, if someone tells another person to stay still while they cut, and they suddenly move and they cut their ear and draw blood, that can get their license taken away. So they were afraid of losing their license, and that's why they had put up the no gaijin sign, the Japanese only sign. And when he came in and they explained that to him, that they're like, look, we're just afraid we're going to lose our license if the person doesn't understand what we're saying. And either one, like, we chop off too much hair, and they can go to the Better Business Bureau and have us get our license taken away if we cut their ear, or they move too suddenly and we like slash their neck or something with they also do shaving and stuff like that. He's like, it can get really dangerous. And he's like, I'm just literally worried for people's safety. Like, I'm not trying to be racist at all. I'm just literally worried about the communication barrier. And he said, okay, well, there's like a nicer way to write this. Like, you can just say, look, we're only able to speak Japanese. That's what we're worried about. You're welcome to come in here if you're a gaijin, but, please be able to speak Japanese for safety reasons. And once he explained that, then the owner got like, oh, so the way I have it written now, where it just says no gaijin, is just super aggressive. And he's like, yeah, it just sounds like too over the top, like that you hate gaijin. And he's like, oh, I didn't even know, like. And that's the thing, like, if you're not really familiar speaking a language every day, you don't really know exactly how harsh you're saying stuff. For example, there's times I have conversations with Japanese people all the time where they'll give me very brief or short answers because they don't have a long list of vocabulary to choose from. And it sounds like they're being very rude, but literally they just don't have long, flowery answers to give me. So if, for example, I was to ask you, are you having a good day today? And you were just like, gosh, no, it's really been a rough day. Things just haven't been going well because I was so busy at work. Well, okay, you've just given me a long description. I totally understand you're bummed out because of work. And if I ask a Japanese person who has very little to no vocabulary, I'm like, so you having a good day? And they're like, no. Because that's all they know how to say is just, no, I'm not. Their answer is no. They're not lying to me, but they're just like, no. They're not being rude. They just don't have a flowery way or a very colloquial way in which to answer my question. They're answering with as much vocabulary as they know, and they're not trying to be rude about it, but it sounds very abrupt and very rude. And you'll probably do the same thing in Japanese, don't get me wrong. I've done the same thing before where afterwards I realized, like, whoa, that was too strong. For example, the word sei means fault or to take blame for it. And you can say things like, oh, sore wa boku no sei, that is my fault. But if you use the word say for another person, like if you say, sore wa anata no sei, that is your fault, it's too strong, it's too over the top. Like, you can be humble by using it yourself and being like, I'm so sorry, what an idiot I am. But if you use it for the other person, it's like being like, you idiot, you messed up. Like, And you don't know that. You just hear the word say, and you're like, you look it up in the dictionary, it says to blame or fault. Like, and you're like, oh, okay, so if I want to say something's my fault, I say this. If I want to use it for someone else, I just say anatta, I just say you, and it add that word. And no, you've gone way over the top with using that. So it's small communication things like this that Eido is starting to understand and find out. And when he's been keyed in on this stuff, he's kind of like, look, let's go in there and approach it first with the situation, just understanding that perhaps it's a communication problem. He's like, I'm not saying 100% that racism doesn't exist in Japan, because it definitely exists, especially, I would say more so against Korean and Chinese people more than any other race, but it does exist. But he said, let's not assume that's the first and only intention of these places putting up these signs. Let's investigate it further and find out more. And so he's been doing this, and one really big one that he did was, there's a company called Renraku, and Renraku runs all these different businesses online. It pretty much does a listing of all these different hotels and everything, and restaurants and everything, and takes a bit of a cut, a bit of a kickback for every time someone uses one of these from their giant list. And they've got a massive list, like a list of like literally hundreds of thousands of places. And within these lists, there was a couple places that David Ardo's users on his site, his users had found problems with. That they had these signs, or on their website it had said like no gaijin allowed, and so they were ready to launch this huge campaign to start litigation to, you know, legally attack these sites and have them blacklisted and shown internationally to be super racist and everything. And a friend of Eido called him up and was like, hey, do you know they're about to do this? And he didn't know. He's not constantly searching their site trying to stop them or anything. And he doesn't want to consider himself any sort of social justice person. He said he doesn't want to be any sort of activist or anything like this. But he said if he can help somebody out with a problem he sees that they're going to face, he will. Because let's be honest, if you have the power to do such a small thing that helps quite a few people out, it's really nice if you can do that. And that's what he did. So he said, oh, what's the situation? You let him know, okay, well, their site's about to attack all these different sites listed under Renraku, because they have signs up and everything that say no gaijin allowed or Japanese only and stuff like that. And he said, okay, well, I used to work for them, because you can see on his LinkedIn, if you go to his LinkedIn and check out his thing, it says that he does. That's how I know that. If you don't know what that is, LinkedIn is a social networking site for jobs and stuff. It's public networking stuff. You can go look it up. I'm not giving away any doxing information or anything like that. So he got in contact with people that he still knew there, because he was still friends with people at the company, and he let them know that this was going on. And so he worked with them to come up with the same list of stuff that he had made up before, of this is how you can just point to this on a list of English orders, menus, selections, directions, how things works, how rooms work, how orders of food work, and different stuff like this. And they sent a letter out to everyone that was listed under their listings and said, look, you know, by Japanese law, you can't say no Japanese only or gaijin not allowed. So you definitely need to take that off. We're telling you this because, number one, it's legally incorrect. Number two, it looks super non-PC in the year 2015. Number three, you know, you could be blacklisted internationally by the community. And also on top of it, here is a list of all the things that you can correct. And Eido helped them set up this huge list of things that they can start to use. And the awesome thing about this list is it's starting to expand out into other companies. He's given everyone 100% right to copy and republish it and send it out and hand it out and give it out for free to everyone and anyone they know that has one of these restaurants that's afraid to speak English and can't, or a hotel that can't speak English and they just need to point to a list. And he's done that. It's awesome. And it's something he said he put it together in like 15 minutes. He did what all these angry people on David Ardo's site couldn't do. They were so busy sitting around thinking of all these different ways to litigate and attack them legally, and that they didn't take the time to just think, gosh, maybe, you know, we should check if they're just scared to speak English, which was almost 100% of the time the situation with these companies. Because let's be honest, when it comes down to it, the motivation of any company is not to be racist. I mean, aside from maybe like some organized hate group like the KKK, their main reason for existing is profit. They want to survive, they want to thrive, and if they can get more customers, well, all the better. If they can put themselves out internationally and get a bigger international audience. For example, last year tourism was one of the highest it's ever been in Japan. Um, all the better for them. They're not going to punch money in the face. They're not going to throw money into the trash and light it on fire. They're going to welcome it any which way they can get it, and that's what their main goal is. And once they find this out, usually most of the time, almost 100% of the time, they're like, yes, it's an answer to getting more money. It's not like, oh great, now we have to give up our racist ideas. Like that's not what they're thinking when they get this information. Now again, I'm not saying racist groups and stuff don't exist in Japan. There's the Uyoku, the Netyoku, all these groups that hate Koreans. There's groups that hate Chinese people. There's huge fights right now over the Senkaku Islands. If you're black and you're a gaijin in Japan, you experience a hell of a lot more racism than me, and I wish it was something I could go into further, but really I feel like you should be a black gaijin vlogger and vlog about that yourself and let us know the experiences you've had, because me talking about the plight of someone who is not me is kind of just, vicarious. Like, I can only be like, oh, I think it's really bad because my friend told me it was really bad. I'm sure it is, I'm not doubting that, but I feel like it should be told first person. That's a very personal story that should be told first person. But anyway, getting back to this now, apparently after Eido did this, and this was just out of the goodness of his heart. This wasn't like him being like, how can I defeat the litigation process of Mr. Daibito? No, he's not Magneto sitting in his den of, supervillains planning out a way to attack Daibito's website. But apparently that's what the users on his site think, and now they're super angry at him. They're doing stuff like trying to dox him. They're harassing him on different social networking sites, constantly, sending him threats and stuff like that, saying that he took away their chance to punish those different companies that were racist, and that they should have been punished first and publicly shamed before they were given the answer to change all these different things, as if that would help the situation, as if punishing people for something they didn't even know that they were doing wrong would make them suddenly see the light. It's kind of ridiculous, and it's oftentimes what I see happen when you see some of these videos sometimes in Japan. I don't know why this guy needed to bang on the side of the jungle gym while I'm filming here. It's kind of weird. I don't know, it's the guy who's sweeping again, who always wants to be in my videos. He's randomly banging. I guess maybe he's like, hey man, come on, let me in the video, man. Give me a chance. Let me talk about this. Maybe he has some really good insight. I should ask him sometime. So anyway, also, I want to reiterate the point again that I don't believe the stuff that's going on now with Daibito Ardo's site is any bit driven by him. Number one, my main reason for thinking that is Daibito does not even live in Japan anymore. He went back to, I believe he went to Hawaii now. He lives in Hawaii now. And he just finished up a PhD, I believe it is. He's published a book and everything like that. He's pretty much like a full-time professional scholar now. And a very intelligent man at that. He's written stuff that I very much so agree with. Some stuff I don't agree with so much. And some of his activism and stuff I don't agree with so much. But that doesn't mean I'm going to deny how educated the man is and how well-read he is and all the research that he's done that's helped people. Eido too. I mean, the guy, he's got to be. You can clearly tell when you listen to the guy speak that he's a highly educated man. But I think this attitude that he has of approaching stuff in a passive way, of opening up a conversation, opening up a dialogue, and finding out what the root of the situation is that is causing people to put up these signs, is the way we should all try to approach racism in every country. And even more so Japan, a place where people for the most part are, very passive. They're not going to launch into some sort of tirade or fight or, challenge to beat you up or something like that. That's not really something you experience in Japan. You don't experience a lot of super aggressive people. For the most part, I would say some of the most peaceful people I've ever met around the world, and I've traveled to quite a few countries, are the Japanese people. I mean, they will literally go out of their way not to get into a fight. Literally bend over forwards and bow to you to not get into a fight. And that's the way we should approach things like racism, because really, let's think about it. If you approach racism in a super ultra aggressive way, and what they're saying is, look at these people, they're fucking animals and stuff like that, and then you come in there acting like an animal, well then you've just proven their point. I mean, let's be honest, if you come out, you know, arms swinging, they're gonna be like, look at this crazy caveman who just jumped into the room. Open up a dialogue. If you see a place like this and you speak Japanese well enough, check out David's site. Check out Heido's site, Turning Japanese. I believe he has that list up there and able to be printed at any time. Think about going there and making that, or think about maybe making a list yourself. Maybe you know how to write enough Japanese, and of course you probably know how to write English if you're a gaijin. Most of you gaijin do. Even if you're from Europe, you know how to write English. So look into doing that. Or if you want to see, other, you want to expand them even into other races and stuff and other languages. Be like, I can even write up, a third language that I know. I know French, or I know Spanish, and Portuguese is important too, because a lot of Brazilians come here. Japan has a big past with Brazil. Look into stuff like that, rather than approach it with an aggressive manner, rather than approach it coming out swinging, litigation, shouting at people, yelling that they're racist and stuff. Think about going about it the Eido way, rather than Daibito's site's users. And I'm not saying Daibito, I'm saying his site users who've now gone out of their way to attack Eido. Go about it the Eido way instead. Try to open up a dialogue, see what you can do to help and squash the problem in the most passive, peaceful, helpful way possible, rather than the most aggressive, litigation and fighting way possible. Anyway, guys, I hope that gives you a little bit of insight into what some racist issues, quote unquote, are in Japan. I hope it's given you some tools to work with, some dialogue to work with, and some thoughts and ideas for digestion. Until next time, I am Unrested. This has been JFAC on racism in Japan. If you like what you saw here today, please like, comment, and subscribe.